Hey everyone, this is Skylar Fox, and I remade the Attack on Titan opening, The Rumbling, using the cast of the Kingdom Hearts series. Click here to check out that video first, because this video is going to show you how I did it. Those who have been familiar with my channel for a while will know that this is actually the third anime OP kind of video that I've done. The very first one was a recreation of the Stardust Crusaders opening for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure using Kingdom Hearts characters. The second was an original opening for a fictional anime called Battle of the Brand, starring the mascots of various fast food chains. And now, I loop back around to recreating a pre-existing anime opening with Kingdom Hearts characters. I had also made a behind-the-scenes video for the Battle of the Brand opening, and so there will be some overlap with some of the things that I'll be talking about here, but I'll try to keep that overlap to a minimum. I am a 3D artist, and so this video is almost entirely in 3D. With the exception of a few still images and one animated shot, each shot either has a rendered 3D character model or uses one for direct reference. However, nearly all of them have been touched up with some 2D elements or other adjustments after rendering. One of the most common techniques I used is one I started using back when making Battle of the Brand, which is to intentionally leave some character models somewhat unfinished, or even some of the animations with some visual bugs that I would need to paint over. The purpose of this was twofold. One, to get the base animations and renders just done faster, and two, to force me to fill in the gaps later in Photoshop, which will inevitably mean that certain frames will be very slightly off model in a way that kind of feels natural when a human is drawing each frame. Because when doing hand-drawn animation, each frame is always going to be very slightly off model because that's just how humans are. We're not as perfect as a computer would be. So in these shots where Terranord is fighting, you can see clipping around his arms and clothes, which I then later fix in Photoshop. In extreme cases, the 3D model may end up being painted over entirely. This is the case with this scene here with Riku in his dark form. I made a 3D model for Riku many years ago, but only in his normal outfit. So I just colored his normal outfit black for the base render, and then in post I drew over every single frame so that he would be wearing his actual dark outfit. This ended up resulting in something more closely resembling rotoscoping, as almost every element had to have been redrawn to some capacity. The face here is obviously redrawn, although this is generally the case with each scene. When I made most of these character models years ago, I didn't make them for the purpose of being rendered with cel shading, and so certain parts like the faces aren't going to look very good when rendered like this. The same thing also happened with ears when you look at them from the side. So while the characters' bodies in each shot are almost always 3D, the face is typically redrawn, and almost entirely 2D in many cases. This helps better sell the look I'm going for, because when humans look at another character, one of the first things that our eyes will be drawn to is the face. This is actually a technique that the Berserk Golden Age trilogy used, to great effect, and it's one that Berserk 2016 doesn't. For contact shadows on the ground, it depended on what made sense for the shot. For high energy shots like this one with Terranord charging forward, I animated the shadow in 2D. For slower shots where Xehanort is slowly walking on the wall, I rendered out a shadow directly in Cinema 4D. And speaking of this shot, if we turn the camera around, you can see that Xehanort doesn't have a shirt, head, or hands. Why did I do this? Well, often when making each shot, I try to think, okay, if I was animating this entirely in 2D, what are some unnecessary details that I may omit for the sake of finishing this animation faster? And so in this case, Xehanort's hands are never visible from this angle, and most of his head isn't either. Parts of his ears would technically be visible in this angle, but his hair covers just about everything else that it isn't an element that the viewer is likely going to notice when watching. It would just be assumed that his head is covered behind the hair. And this is actually an instance where I replaced the 3D hair entirely with a single 2D image, and then used the Mesh Warp tool in After Effects to simulate the smooth back and forth motion as he is walking. I ended up using the Mesh Warp tool a fair bit in certain scenes, such as this one with Sora riding the Keyblade Tornado. I posed Sora up in Cinema 4D and rendered him out as just a single frame. I then touched up that frame in Photoshop to fix visual bugs and redraw the face, then put it in After Effects. Then I would use the Mesh Warp to simulate the illusion of his clothes and hair moving with the wind. I even did this to make the whole upper body move down for impact before the tornado charges forward at the end of the shot. This is all technically using one frame, it's just Mesh Warp doing all of it. Another instance of this was with the scene where Aqua wakes up, breathing through her hands. Each hand is made of a single image, duplicated and animated with the mesh warp. The contact shadows are animated through an After Effects mask, and the sleeves are completely animated with just an After Effects solid shape that has an inner shadow effect applied. The breath effect isn't hand animated, it's just an After Effects particle simulation, but I thought it actually worked out pretty well. Now, categorizing whether the backgrounds are 2D or 3D is kind of weird because at their core, all of them technically start out as 3D. The vast majority of backgrounds in this video are essentially a heavily filtered version of locations rendered within the games themselves. Kingdom Hearts 3 has a photo mode that makes this process especially easy, as I'm able to just take some photos, put them to my computer, and then just modify them in Photoshop to look more stylized. Most of the time, that would be that. But if I want to make a shot where the camera moves in 3D space, I usually have to get a little more creative. For example, with this shot in the Keyblade Graveyard, I took this picture in Kingdom Hearts 3 in-game. I applied the various Photoshop filters, such as cutout, and then I split the image into 3 layers: the sky, the mountains, and then the ground. I then apply each layer into a separate 3D object in Cinema 4D through projection mapping. This creates this interesting effect where you can move through these 2D images in 3D space. It looks really weird when you are actually seeing the full picture, but just through the lens of the camera, it works. A similar, though less complex, version of this was done in this scene in Hollow Bastion. I took 4 images of the room as it appears in Kingdom Hearts 1 and made a single panorama image. Then I applied the usual styling and projected it onto a plane where the camera can move forward and kind of spin around. The only consistent background element to actually use fully 3D elements is the wall that Xehanort walks around throughout the opening. This wall is of course a recreation of the actual walls from Attack on Titan, with the same housing style found in this last shot. And this, the Dark Sides, and Xehanort cosplaying as Eren Yeager, was actually something I was making for a completely different project before deciding that I wanted to expand into making a whole animated video with them. That other project is actually a massive collaboration effort called Datascape. It is a zine being put together by various 3D artists in the Kingdom Hearts community, and it is really cool. I'll release a very short video related to that when it's getting closer to release, which should be very soon, but I'll leave a link in the description for the website so you can learn more about it. And that just about covers it. It was a lot of fun making that video, and I hope you had just as much fun watching it. Besides the Datascape project that I mentioned earlier, there is another project that I have going on that I will eventually talk about on this channel at some undisclosed future time. Feel free to subscribe to stay updated on that, and also check out Nerd Odyssey for some other videos I helped out with, and I hope you all have a great day.